Hello there, internet friends, and welcome to episode number 102 of FinalBossTV, your WoW and game rating show. I'm your host, my name is Adam K.A.K. Bay, and today is the 2015 edition of the pre-BlizzCon special with one returning guest and one completely new from some dark corner of the internet, or wherever he hails from. He's apparently a vampire IRL too, but not confirmed or denied. You can never really tell, so... The returning guest, of course, coming back again. I think it's like your third or fourth time on the show again, sir. You're vying for top spot, I think. You're vying for top spot. There's Bellular. Hello, sir.
I would be lucky number 3. Hey, guys. Great to be back in the show again. Whoa. What?
Whoa. Look at that.
Whoa.
Nice smolder for the chat there on the freeze screen.
Nice smolder?
Yeah. Your camera froze.
Man, Asmongold, what are you doing to us?
I know, man.
It's my viewers.
Is it your viewers?
This is how bad they are. This is how bad they are.
Are they
fellows?
Did they cause Bell's camera to freeze?
You're underestimating him.
I am.
Plan this. Perfect.
Well, you can say hi, Asmon. Hello, sir. You're the new guest on the show today. Hello.
This is the part where I do the awkward hello.
Yes.
Hey.
Yeah, I would take that as that's the awkward hello. I like it.
Yeah.
You might have to refresh your camera, Bell, real quick, because you are... I like the look you're giving. It is this really dismissive, like, what the hell is going on in chat look. I like it.
It's fitting.
It is fitting. If you're listening to this only on the audio version, you're missing out. So you go to the YouTube or come to the live stream and get the whole thing right there. But, yeah, I'll let you finagle with that for just a moment, and we'll start this all out here. So... Thank you for both being on the show today. There's a lot of stuff to talk about. I think this episode is a bit... When we were prepping the show notes, there was a lot of little bits. We were like, we can't talk about that and not be, like, kind of salty sounding. So we'll have to see if we can stay on pace for that. Because right now, there's a lot of little bits and pieces here that could get a little bit grumpy. Maybe? I don't know.
I'm eating saltines right now.
Are you?
Perfect.
I am. Don't worry about it.
Are you?
I got the salt covered.
Are you eating saltines, but you lick both sides and you actually dunk them in salt, like you're dipping a cookie in milk, and then you eat it, right?
What?
Hang on, salt and milk?
What is
no,
that?
like you are dunking an Oreo cookie, but it's a saltine you dunking in salt. You got to get the extra level, man.
Maybe if I was a starving African child, but not anytime. Not anytime today.
Oh, goodness. There you go. Bell's back on camera. There you go. You're not frozen. Good stuff.
I've recovered
You've
from chat.
Recovered from
guys.
the chat
Cheers.
explosion. Yeah.
It's a good try, guys. Better
Oh my gosh. Good try. So yeah, I'll go back in the opposite order then. Asmon, what do you do on the internet, and why should anyone care about what you have to say?
That's a good question. I guess I call myself a professional neckbeard. I do World of Warcraft videos. I do all kinds of videos, guides, discussions, and lots of comedy videos that I hope everybody enjoys, as well as I try and tweet out some funny jokes on my Twitter as well. Besides that, I do some Diablo videos, and I might do an Overwatch video if they ever decide to give me a beta.
Ah, I see. How long have you been doing YouTube stuff?
Well, I mean, if you want to count the videos where I, like, hit my friends with traffic cones since 2008. But the new videos since, like, it's almost 2 years. It'll be 2 years very, very soon.
Wow, 2 years.
So, it's been a ride. It's been a ride.
I mean, absolutely. I think those videos where you hit your friends with traffic cones count, though. That counts as real YouTubing, though.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's training.
That's training.
Yeah, training.
That's just how it's how you start thinking about how to actually make actual YouTube videos? I mean,
well, I mean, we can also get into the MySpace videos I did in 05, where I blew up tater tots in my backyard.
What is that website you just what is that? What is MySpace? What is this?
Yeah. I'll have to link it for people.
Oh my god. Who were your top 8? Was Tom in your top 8?
I deleted that guy.
Wow.
I didn't even talk to him. I remember I tried to send him a message. He never said anything back.
Jeez.
Yeah, I was 14. I didn't know any better.
Good grief. All right, Bell, you've been on the show a little bit, but some people might not know what you do on the internet, so why the hell should they care about what you have to say? What do you do on the internet webways, sir?
I make YouTube videos about World of Warcraft and not Overwatch, which was the plan. Blizzard, thanks guys, really appreciate it.
Oh my goodness.
Love you. Got a little hint of salt here and there. No. So yeah, just World of Warcraft stuff, really discussing the game, things like that. Not as much of a crazy raider as the two gentlemen with me, sadly. Heroics and normals, very hardcore stuff, I know. But yeah, certainly Warlords has been it's been a fun time. Legion could be a fun time, hopefully. So it's yeah, good to be back.
Yeah, absolutely. We had to, again, it's weird. I was actually looking back through, because I make so many of these episodes every Sunday for the most part, I actually kind of forgot that you were also here with Noble for the 2014 one. So it's been interesting to see how much has changed, especially with this camera issue right now. You can't handle it.
Hey, the last time I was here, I was a blue man for half the show.
That is very true. You were. I don't know why. It happens. Just have to do the
refresh time.
Refresh time. It might become a thing.
There we go. There we go.
Yeah. You were. That is a good point. You were. You broke my regions and you were Blue Man for most of the show. Yeah. Oh my goodness. So let's jump on the BlizzCon hype train. I don't have any tickets to give out because I'm not as prepared as Monte Cristo for the Korean hype train for League of Legends. But what are you guys excited about for the convention? And I know Bell isn't going, sadly. Aspen, are you going?
It's not happening in my house, is it?
No.
Didn't know.
It's a lot of dangers outside, man. It's hard stuff.
Yeah. It's a dangerous world out there.
It is. It is a dangerous world. So, Aspen, what are you excited for about BlizzCon this year?
I'm really hoping, honestly, more than anything, guys, I'm hoping for some really, really strong fundamental changes to WoW. I mean, like, Warcraft 4, of course, that would be awesome. Probably not going to happen. StarCraft 2, not really a big fan, and maybe also even a Diablo 3 expansion. I think that's a possibility.
Oh.
And maybe even at that point, with the second expansion, we will get into the quadrillions of damage, since we're already into the trillions now in Season 4.
I don't know.
So, yeah, very exciting.
I think we're going to get mega damage before that, even though the item squish was kind of... we're already back in like early mop damage already.
Oh no, Diablo.
They tried. It was cute what they did.
Oh, you mean for the Diablo numbers?
It's in another universe.
Oh,
like trillions of health is like, oh, it's not that much.
I don't know. I think Diablo needs like an item squish. It feels, or or a damage number squish. Yeah. I don't do much Diablo 3. I guess you dabble in a bit.
Yeah, I have like about 2 to 3 week sessions where I don't shower and I hardly eat and I just play the game for 18 hours a day, and then I stop completely for a year.
That's sort of how Diablo is structured to be
That's
played.
That's what it's built to do.
Yeah.
I'm their target audience.
Nope. That is definitely true. Oh, goodness. So yeah, the future of StarCraft 2 will be an interesting panel. The problem with the future of StarCraft 2 bit, which like most people on the internet right now are like, Warcraft 4? Is that panel happens at the same time that a very important World of Warcraft panel is happening.
Oh,
so
shit.
I won't be able to... I'll have to like get the cliff notes on that one.
Well, the future of StarCraft 2, there is none, I don't think. I think that they already announced that Legacy of the Void is going to be the last expansion.
Oh, yeah.
And it's going to make sense.
StarCraft 2, not the IP itself, but it does.
I would be amazed.
It makes me sad that we're probably not going to have a lot of StarCraft again because, like, I still remember back 2010 heading down to... I remember the day really clearly. It was like, I don't think it was wintry, but whatever. It was terrible. I walked like 4 miles, got the collector's edition, hoofed the whole thing back home. Great time. And it's a little bit sad maybe that StarCraft is going to be less a part of Blizzard's lineup, I suppose.
I
Same
think
for Diablo. It's really crazy how they...
More and more games have to have some sort of esports. Yeah, some sort of esports thing built into it where they can have tournaments and stuff like that. So like you can see on Twitch TV... that game would be at the top row, as like advertisement. And games that don't really have that, there's a really strong correlation between games that don't have an esports component, competitive component, and games that are not very successful. There are very few games that are successful that don't have a competitive component.
Certainly for Twitch.
It's definitely weird right now with how the media is going. Right, exactly. I mean, I don't think StarCraft 2 will ever fall out of like the esports scene, but then what are people going to do? Because the game will be eventually like done. Like outside of a couple of people like making sure balance patches and stuff like that keep going and tweaks right there. There's a lot of people suddenly now that are not working on a game. They've been working on StarCraft now for almost 2 decades. So it's finally done.
Well, I think that we'll see
Yeah.
another StarCraft. It's just that I don't think that we'll see one for a while.
Really?
I mean, I always like. I mean, I didn't make a tinfoil hat for this episode, but
Damn
if
it!
I had one, I'd put it on right now. Is I hope that they're stopping StarCraft 2 and wrapping that up to maybe make a transition into a Warcraft 4, which they said was a possibility in an
Right.
interview, but it's still a very, very unlikely circumstance.
Yeah. I think with StarCraft, it doesn't, at least in my perception, it doesn't seem to bring in the numbers anymore. Both in terms of the Twitch stuff as well, but also the raw game sales, which makes me really sad. It might be one of my favorite Blizzard franchises anyway.
RTS games have kind of fallen out of favor with players in general, I think.
Yeah, they're all scrub games like League and Dota now.
Oh,
I know, yeah.
disgusting.
All the games that make all that money and stuff, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I just replayed through all of the campaign in Wings of Liberty and Heart of the Swarm and the prologue missions, and I haven't in like a while because a lot of my viewers have never ever seen the story. So I'm hyped for Legacy of the Void story and the epilogue to see how they're gonna wrap it up, because I've been growing up with StarCraft, right?
Yeah.
Kind of how you grew up with
Me too.
Warcraft, but
Yeah.
Warcraft is still going, so it's like there's no end. But now, like, same thing with Diablo, right? There's no end right now; it just keeps kind of going. But with StarCraft 2, it might actually be the end of the StarCraft universe. So it's kind of like a big,
I don't think that, I mean, like, from a business perspective, I don't know if that would even be a good idea to end such a huge
Right,
franchise. I mean, they could be doing something kind of like how they did with Illidan, where they just didn't talk about him for 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
And then, 6 BlizzCons from now, there's like this been a big unreleased event, and it's like, oh my God, StarCraft 3, and so I'm not sure.
yeah.
I think it's a possibility, though.
It's definitely an interesting turning point right now for us, because we obviously just got Overwatch as well, and that's still in the process of being building and coming out. And they have a panel on like the Overwatch world and where it's going to go and whatever. We want everyone out there that has either Overwatch or has played it obviously wants to know, like, what's the progression going to be like, what's the payment model going to be like. So that's going to be a huge swing, because we've seen with Heroes and Hearthstone, like, they're making hand over fist in the moolah because of the microtransaction kind of
Yeah,
base.
they're printing money.
I don't know how they're gonna do it with Overwatch, because it might be a hybrid of the two.
Well,
But
I think that that there was a data mine change where people can see the new currency that they buy, and I think
really?
that games, they like to do this thing where you buy this alternative currency and then you buy the items, so you're not
gems.
entirely sure how much money you're wasting on the game whenever you're doing it, which I think is actually a very good idea. But I think that could probably be the way it goes, and maybe
It's most
go ahead.
likely like free to play, follow the HOTS model. Probably have too much, too expensive skins, but I'd say that makes the most sense. They're Blizzard. They can, with their art, I think they can print money via skins and the like. So
Right.
that's what would make the most sense.
That's what
Plus, they
they've
want to
been
get
doing.
people into the IP.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think that they've made a really, really big effort with Overwatch to get so many people into the game that aren't necessarily like your traditional Blizzard players,
Oh,
like
of course, of
World
course,
of
of course.
Warcraft players.
Yeah.
And you can see that with who they invited to the beta. I mean, I would find it surprising if they didn't specifically invite Summit and certain other people
Oh, of
to
course.
test out this game. And so I think that's a really good idea, and hopefully it pays off for them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
certainly they're talking about the world of Overwatch a lot, which really interests me because they're talking about the world of a shooter that's like 6v6 without much of a larger context. Yet we know about this like group of people who are Overwatch. Some of them are good, some of them are bad. They're having this panel thing, so
Right,
you've got
right.
to wonder if this is going to be the big like free-to-play game which expands it off into a wider universe, which is clear they have in their head because Overwatch is pretty much the husk of Titan, from what we gather anyway.
No,
Is it?
definitely right. The
thought it
people that were
was.
working on the Titan project apparently
I'd say
were the ones
heavily
that were rolled
inspired.
into Overwatch. Yeah.
Yeah, I
think
wasn't
they-
sure really what happened with that.
They've never really released a public statement that said like what happened, but for the most part, they were probably making a futuristic sci-fi-ish shooter-ish MMO or something that they just couldn't get to work, so they just like gutted the parts that were good and made a shooter.
Well, it could also be because of the release of Destiny, and
yeah,
how much of a market share that's taken over, like kind of like sci-fi
True.
shooters and all
True.
that stuff as well.
true. Not
Yeah,
bad.
I don't know.
We'll have to see. A lot of weird things for Blizzard, because this is the first like avenue they're
Yeah.
going into. Because when we saw Hearthstone, it was almost like the same kind of deal. We were like, oh my god, microtransactions, collectible card game, holy crap, it's gonna like pay to win, which any card game is pay to win. Let's be honest. So that was like a couple years ago now. So now we're getting this other thing where like, oh, they're doing a freaking shooter. It's gonna have an esport tied to it, of course. Is it gonna be console? Is it gonna be PC?
Do you know if Overwatch has a campaign?
They have
No.
not said,
No,
I don't
okay.
and
think
it
so.
doesn't. No.
I'm
Yeah,
99% sure it's basically like it's your TF2. You know, everyone loads up, heads into a this team versus that team kind of arena match.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, TF2 has like kind of an overarching storyline that kind of supports the character's involvement, but it
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily have an actual narrative behind it. And so we could see maybe they might do that with Overwatch as well, just to kind of develop the characters so people can identify with them,
Right.
but maybe not necessarily create an entire narrative around with the
I
around the game.
I think what they've said with Overwatch though is they're gonna have actually like kind of like you remember the Lords of War series for World of Warcraft, right? That
Yeah.
previewed us all these
yeah.
different characters in Warcraft. I kind of feel like they're gonna have like comics and video content to enrich the world of Overwatch, but not actually have anything in the game and just keep the game simple and Blizzard style simple, right? Because Heroes of the Storm, very simple type of game in comparison to its competitors. Hearthstone, also the same thing, right? Complex when you get deeper, but also like overall very easy to get into and out of. That's like their new thing. So we'll have to see. But I'll shift us forward to the wrap-up for Warlords of Draenor. This might be literally like one of the last times I talk about Warlords of Draenor, because in a week, it'll basically be all we can play, but dead to all of us because we have
Let's
all the
hope
Legion.
so.
That is
we
a
hope
weird
so.
feeling.
Yeah. So the good, the bad, and the LFR then.
You don't
So,
have to repeat yourself.
Yeah.
In that case, which one of us is the LFR?
Well, I'm just going to say, I'll go with Bell first. What do you think was super awesome? And then also not so great about Warlords. Kind of an open topic. You see all my chunk of notes here. So what do you want to go into?
Well, we'll start off the leveling because everyone says that's awesome. Plus, it's also the first thing in the show notes. So the leveling, I'd say, like, it was great having the voice acting and all of that stuff. I wish the voice acting was better. I think Blizzard are pretty terrible at that, but it's nice that it's there. Cool treasures. I like a lot of those features that made the world feel more rich. So overall, I'm happy with the leveling process. I do think it's a little bit too quick, though. And it's funny, after playing Star Wars The Old Republic, one of the great things about that game is you kind of have one storyline throughout a zone.
Right.
And Warlords did a little bit of that, which I think was kind of nice. Definitely had a problem where I'd say half of the zones were rubbish from that storyline perspective, but certainly in Legion, if they can have, if they can have a full set of zones, brilliant stories, good leveling, in the vein of Warlords, I think it could be definitely quite good. Cinematics are great. I'd say that's really the best parts of Warlords. Beautiful art as well, great music. I think a lot of the issues is just when you hit max level, it's fun for a month or two, and then it just really falls apart. Unfortunately,
feels very front loaded, I would say.
Very front loaded. I remember way back in the beta, I said, I don't know if it was on a video, I think it was, but I basically said, like, this is going to get 90s. And stuff like that from the various gaming websites for the reviews. And lo and behold, exactly that. Like, that's what happens. And then it just plummets, which is unfortunate. And the thing is, I'd say it wouldn't have plummeted so much if they had just added new stuff, but they didn't. So, yeah, it's a bit unfortunate with Warlords. But in terms of the pluses, like, they definitely are there. And there's definitely stuff that they can build off. The hope is just that they learn from the mistakes and they just don't make an end game that was like this expansion next time round, hopefully.
Yeah. I don't know.
That's most of my thoughts for the pros, though.
Yeah, sure. You can go to your negatives, because then I'll give Asmongold the mic. So, yeah, what do you think? There's a lot of negatives here that kind of branch off, and you don't have to talk about every single one of them, but what do you think? What are your negatives that you have to take away that you don't hope ever show their face again in Legion?
The sad thing is, like, where do you start? So,
wow,
negatives. Let's start with Apexis. That's the buzzword that everyone loves.
Sure.
So, Apexis Crystal themselves, obviously, it's just a name, but I think that form of daily content was pretty rubbish, honestly. And I think Blizzard know that. Ian Hazacostas pretty much was, like, he was frank in that interview that he gave. I think it was maybe around April, May-ish, which was totally nice to see. So hopefully that won't happen again in Legion. Dungeons as well. Like, the dungeons were beautiful, actually. And I remember back in the beta test for, or the alpha even, for Warlords, when the dungeons were harder, they were brilliant. Like, some of them were very, very good. I remember especially, Shadow Moon Burial Grounds. Yeah, the very first boss. When everything there would kill you, it was decently fun for a dungeon. But unfortunately, that stuff just didn't matter as much when we hit endgame then, and I'm pretty sure Asmongold and I are going to just completely go down the RNG rabbit hole at some point.
That's
right.
Just
RNG, away with you. disappear. I don't want to see your like again. You are just killing it, man. Everything.
What was the term you used, Mike?
The term
The Skinner box.
Yeah, it's a little bit Skinner box-ish,
Yeah.
and because like the content doesn't progress, but it's it's them constantly trying to progress the rewards you get by bolting on Warforged, bolting on stuff.
Yeah.
I remember tweeting this. It's kind of like you run 8 miles, you feel great, then you look down, you realize you're on a treadmill and you haven't went anywhere. That's pretty much how elements of the expansion felt at the end game, and that would be my main kind of downside. Plus, as well, just there needed to be a bit more content, bit more story. But I think Blizzard know that. I think they're not completely unself-aware. They've got to have realized that they didn't really add much of anything other than Hellfire after it launched. So that's really my pluses and negatives. It's a mixed bag. Overall, a negative one, but there's certainly a lot to learn from, and they've said good shit about Legion so far.
It's weird. It started off like a 70, like a 80-20, right? 80% positive and 20% negative, and then like the first major content patch really swung everything. We were like, this is it for like 4 months.
Yep.
So I don't know, Asmongold, what do you think, man? You want to start with your positives, then you can go into your not so greats, your negatives. What do you think, sir? How'd the expansion?
Are you talking about our first major content patch, 6.1 Garrisons update?
Yeah, man, the Twitter integration, the selfie camera though.
That's it. Yeah, that's it. Cost us a raid tier.
Oh.
So I mean, obviously, of course not. Obviously the leveling was incredible. You've got the cinematics at the end of every zone. I thought those were great, except for the fact that Orgrim Doomheimer died to Blackhand. What a joke. What a joke. But besides that, all of them were really, really great. I enjoyed it a lot. I thought that the story was, in a way, like kind of contrived. I didn't really like a lot of the elements of the story. I thought the Yrel storyline was pretty good, and outside of that, a lot of the other, I guess, like elements and the way that things worked out, it didn't really make a lot of sense to me, and I don't. It didn't really seem like very, I don't know, like very thematic. Besides that, obviously, in the first tier of Warlords, we saw some of the best gear that we've ever seen in this entire game ever. You've got those incredible Mythic Blackrock Foundry sets, and you've also got the incredible Elite PvP gear, and both of those. I thought that was really setting a standard and moving forward in a real way, because they did actually say that they were making the gear based more on like the class fantasy rather than the raid tier, and I think that really showed up in that first tier of gear, and it looks great, and so that was a huge plus. There have been a lot of really great things with Warlords of Draenor, but I think that it's more than a content problem, and not saying that it isn't a huge content problem, but even more than that, I think that we really have also a problem with incentivization. Too soon do they outdate and basically remove content from the expansion by adding in more lucrative and easier ways to obtain better gear. And so where you would have been like gearing yourself up through like killing those little rare bosses and rare mobs outside around Warlords of outside in Draenor, you don't really have to do that, because you can just go into a heroic dungeon and complete that without really any effort whatsoever. And I think that Bellular really touched on a very good point, which is Warlords of Draenor offered such a very, very strong 50 to 200 hours, depending on how you play the game, of gameplay. And so you got into the game and you had the best time ever, in the first month, or if you're like a neckbeard like me, in the first week. And, outside of that, things did kind of start to peter out and get a little bit repetitive and a little bit stale. And one of the biggest problems to me is, I think that the RNG elements of the game, to me, it removes a lot of the fun, because you can never really be certain about anything, and I think that that's really kind of bothered me, as well as all the almost every spec, to the best of my knowledge now, has some RNG element that creates a very large variance between maximum potential DPS and minimum potential DPS. And so you can have somebody have maybe a 40% variance between one pull and another, and be doing the exact same thing. And all of these things, I think that what this all comes down to is taking control out of the player's hand. And I really hope that in Legion, that it puts it back into players' hands in all ways possible. One of the things that I used to really like about the game is that you reap what you sow, and if you succeed, it's because of your own efforts, and if you fail, it's also because of your own I don't know, shortcomings or whatever. And I just really like to see them bring that back, and I guess like get rid of the whole idea that there can't be a lose condition. I think at some level, if there isn't a lose condition, it ceases to become a game. That's debatable, but of course that's the way that I feel about it.
There
Yeah,
is
totally.
a yeah, no, I agree. There is definitely
Yeah.
a once they squished the game and once they kind of prune some of the game, which the pruning was very much hit or miss per class. It did show incredibly glaring flaws in certain classes, as well as the new combat stats. I'm gonna jump forward in the notes now, because we can talk about like the world of systems, the gear, the items, and the player power delta, I guess. And
Yeah.
because you brought up this RNG element, and I looked back over on my kill videos from my POV on Heroic Highmaul, right? This is Kargath Bladefist. This is the first boss in any of the raids in all this expansion. And the DPS was between like 60k, 70k burst, and then like everyone's around 24 to 30k when like you're not AoEing and you're not doing all the crazy cooldowns. By the end, though, now on Mythic Highmaul, like looking at Archimon progression or Manaroth, it's 150k to upwards of over 300,000 on burst. And I know there has to be power gains. There has to be players gaining item levels. There has to be like a meaningful exploration of your player's kit via the gear you get, but that seems a little bit excessive that we just basically jumped 2.5 expansions worth of DPS.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't see how anybody would say that it's not ridiculous.
Yeah.
And whenever you create so many different varying levels of gear and difficulty, you have to have a power jump for each one, especially whenever you add in a Warforged element. And so, the lowest Hellfire Citadel gear is what, like 670, 685, something like that. And the highest is, what's it going to be, 751. Assuming you have Mythic Archimon Warforged gear 2 of 2 upgraded. And so, I mean, there's just this huge variance, and that same variance in of item level disparity, you would be more used to seeing that in an entire expansion, not
Yeah.
just a raid tier.
Forgive me for being sentimental, but thinking back to even Wrath of the Lich King, we started off what item level 200
Item level
was
200,
thing,
yes.
and what 289. I remember 264 was like
280,
the normal 25
no.
player loot. I
Um,
think.
288, 284 was heroic
Yeah.
Lich King 25 man.
So
277 was the rest of heroic ICC 25 man.
you're going up like less than 100 item levels in a
Right.
whole expansion, and I still think that felt like a lot of fun, that progression, because an ICC player was still doing way more damage than an Axe player. There was a good enough progression, it felt good, and there was still enough room for people to do really great things with their classes. And you don't need to be, say, 60%. A top end player doesn't need to be 60, 100% better than a median player. Like, I even remember, and I'm sure half the chat remembers, like, Kriparian's videos about how to do maximum DPS and all of that stuff back at ICC. All of that gameplay was still there. That was all satisfying. That progression was great. And I suppose it's as if it's a form of spectacle creep when it comes to the numbers. Like, every tier, it's like they feel like they need a bigger jump, a bigger this, bigger that, more systems, more X, more Y, more Z, to the point where you're just like, God, man, just give me a bow and I'll shoot it and I'll be done and I'll be happy.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
something that
Yeah.
that also comes into play here is how it is for new players coming back into the game.
Totally.
And it's like right
Yep.
now, it's like if you don't have that legendary ring, if you don't have mythic gear, I mean, you're in the rat league, okay? And if you do, you are a god. And so there's this huge difference between having the best gear and not having the best gear. And in previous expansions like Burning Crusade and especially in Vanilla, and even going into Wrath of the Lich King, the DPS variance between like a top, I guess like a very well geared player in the first tier of raid gear and in the last tier of raid gear wasn't as huge as it is now. Now it's double, sometimes 3 or 4 times as much. And so as a new player coming back into the game, it's very hard to get back into it and have a chance at even getting into a raiding guild or something like that,
Yeah.
and having your friends bring you on runs or getting into pugs when you're just so far behind because of how many different gear steps you have to take and how many you missed out on.
I also think it makes some of Blizzard's, it makes their own life harder in a way, because
Oh yeah.
since there's so much variance between players, if someone's going into a raid, okay, yeah, some people are just going to be terrible and do rubbish DPS, but the amount of variance between everyone creates this, I think, a situation for raiding, and especially for the pugs. This isn't something I do nowadays. Like, I don't really pug much, but with there being this variance in gear, with it being so hard for people to start off, I've got to imagine that causes very large balance problems when it comes to a lot of their encounters, getting people actually onto that ladder. Because like the ladder, you propel yourself up to the first rung, and it still is crazy after that. I don't know, it just seems like in terms of the progression, it's going to be, it's far trickier for them now than when it was previously, when there were less item levels to worry about, and a player that was like Ulduar geared, they could probably still hop into ICC or something like that just
Easily.
fine.
Yes.
Yeah, whereas now it's just not the case. Which is odd, because they're trying to make raiding so much more accessible these days. Yet it seems like because of all these things that they're doing to make it more exciting, not really exciting,
Right.
Did you
they're
forget
actually just
variety?
making it harder for themselves and harder for players.
There is this big issue that I've seen being a raider for so long, that I just always wonder, there are too many like eye level jumps. There should be a jump between entire raids, but not just between the raid you're currently in, which kind of goes back to the first one we brought up about LFR. There are probably too many difficulties in the game right now. I mean, if they don't change anything going into Legion, we're going to have LFR, normal, heroic, and mythic raids, and we're going to have normal, heroic, and mythic dungeons, as well as challenge modes, if they keep that system going forward, right? We're probably going to have a new profession system. The Warforged system will probably still exist. They're removing multi-strike, but possibly adding other secondaries. And the artifact system, which will progress through the entire expansion. The facepalm is real, right?
You just can't take it anymore.
There's almost too
Everybody
much.
has Ashbringer.
Yeah, well, I mean,
World of welfare. That's it.
I think it'll be a cool system.
Yeah, I think they didn't
But
need to make it Ashbringer,
Right,
but
right.
the gameplay, like the system design there, I think is really solid and will be a really fun progression. It's just it could have been my epic sword that I made epic, and not just grabbing your man who was in Lord of the Rings as one whose name I've forgotten, or Thralls or whatever. It just seems a little bit too like, hey guys, hashtag hype, it's Thralls thing.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
a cool system, I still think.
I don't
the
know.
one thing. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I said I don't really know. Like, since we are playing an MMO, it seems like you shouldn't have to, create that willing suspension of disbelief that also everybody else is also simultaneously the leader of the class hall. But no, now you're also the leader of the class hall, and you have this legendary weapon that was wielded by, let's say, Tyrion Fordring, and oh, now this other paladin, XX Pally also has this same weapon. What's really going on here? I don't know. I just don't really like the whole idea of everybody having the same the same item that's in the lore. One of the things I thought was really great about Vanilla and Burning Crusade and into Wrath of the Lich King even is that everybody was kind of on the same page thematically. You go into Stormwind and you see things, and of course, I mean, there's like three or four different people with Sulphur's Hand of Ragnaros. But other than that, I mean, you're kind of experiencing the same world. Everybody in the game is experiencing the same world, and it felt like you were really playing together. Whereas now, with like personal loot and other things like that I believe to be more, I guess, like changes to facilitate antisocial behavior. It seems more like you're playing simultaneously. You're playing at the same time as somebody else rather than you're playing with them. If that makes sense.
I think that.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's gonna be cool if I get the Doomhammer, right? Or as Preach says, the Doombringer. But I think that all the artifacts should have all been like something new or old found that isn't exactly incredibly iconic, because suddenly you have like the Hunters or the Death Knights getting these new weapons that didn't exist before, right? Even the reforging of the Frostmourne stuff into two weapons, that's still like based off an old one. We already did that, of course, with Shadowmourne, into something new. But I think getting the iconic weapons are kind of going to be weird. I wonder if they're going to change that, though, because we haven't heard anything since Gamescom.
Yeah, I could totally see them doing something like that. And going back to Asmongold's point about how that feel has changed,
Yeah.
it's as if they've started writing who our characters are as like we are the protagonists of the story. We're the champion, the commander. That's what they keep on telling us. Whereas back in the day, you know, you were an adventurer, you were going around slaying cows and stuff that was not always the most high octane, but I think that those lows facilitated a lot of very good highs.
Yeah,
And that's kind of juxtaposed by, I guess, a lot of spectacle creep now, where we're the super badass commander. Next thing, you know, 3 expansions time, we'll be wearing Master Chief armor, doing like crazy stuff with jetpacks. Because
I
they
can't
just
wait.
love like expanding and going mad.
Yeah,
with it.
there's been a huge spectacle creep, and you could see that they were trying to, I guess, like counteract that in Mists of Pandaria, with like kind of bringing it back
Yeah.
to just chilling with the pandas, getting drunk and killing shahs. You know, nothing too
Right.
complex, nothing too hard. But you know, I think honestly what it really would come down to is the spectacle creep, and also what you were saying about the adventure. We talked a lot about this the other day, where it's like in
Yeah.
vanilla, in Burning Crusade, man, you made your own way in the World of Warcraft. And it's like my mom was playing this game then, and like, you think she raided? No, she didn't do any of that. But she made her own way fishing and, like, you know, selling the fish and buying gear and getting something out of it. And I think that since they try and pigeonhole everybody, you know, get everybody on the theme park ride and say, here you go, you're the commander, the leader of the alliance, and now you're also going to be the class leader. You know, they kind of have to define the story for somebody. And whenever you define the story for someone, that takes away the investment that a player gets, that a person gets, from developing and creating their own story.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said for stumbling into an experience that you didn't expect. Or that you didn't see coming, or that isn't just necessarily something that was completely, you know, set in stone with the way things are. It's as if more than ever, and I suppose one of the things is because Blizzard, obviously they didn't make this genre, but they made this particular incarnation of the genre. They naturally, I think, saw that at the end game, players started to trend to do a certain thing with, you know, the gear treadmill and all of that. So the more they saw that naturally happen back in the day, I'd say then they thought, right, we need to design, like, that's what people are doing. So we need to design so that that's what they do. And then you get to the stage where those things are hyper defined, where, you know, you hit max level and it's like, right, this is your set content. You do X amount per week, whatever. And that's what we've laid out for you. As opposed to, here's this big wide world. We just made a cool world. We don't really know what's going on, but you guys have fun. That's kind of how
Yeah,
it used to be. Whereas
that's
now
how
it's
I
super
felt.
kind of pigeoned in. And I still think, even though they hole you in sometimes, like the content is really good. Like I had a blast in Blackrock Foundry, and Guild Issues kind of hurts. Hellfire, High Maul was great. I love the dungeon, so the content's great. I just think they maybe need to expand out that endgame breadth a little bit more and just make things kind of less defined in a way.
Less defined. I also feel like for new players, there's also too much of it. I think you just posted a video about this, Bellular, about LFR. I think Preach just recently
Oh,
did.
yeah.
I don't know if, how much you've talked about the LFR situation.
Oh, no,
Asmon,
I hardly ever
but
talk about
oh yeah,
LFR.
no.
Ask the
But
general forums.
but I think, oh goodness, but I think that, like, I wonder if they're going to be making normal queuable, and then it'll be heroic as it is now, and then mythic as it is now, because they've simplified or tried to simplify classes a bit, which went over well with some and others not so much. But I think they need to have a little bit more of the simplification of the game now. And if they're going to keep Mythic Dungeons as a system, they need to actually make them different. And that was your adventure talk there too. I had the side topic here that there is no actually adventure in dungeoning anymore.
Yes.
Raids obviously have to be defined and linear to a point with some optional stuff
Yeah.
here and there, or wings or whatever, because it has to be consistent because it's a group effort, a huge group effort.
I think the best example of a raid
Yeah, okay.
being defined and also having these optional elements to it is Karazhan. Karazhan is probably one of the best designed raids that
Yeah.
they've ever done.
Right,
And
right.
you can see how well they put that together with having those optional, animal bosses.
Yep.
Maiden of Virtue, I believe, is also optional. And so you could kind of progress at your own pace and do the bosses that you wanted to do, that your guild felt comfortable doing. And I think that allowed so many other guilds to move into that and pick and choose what they wanted to do.
Right.
And we have that a little bit now with Hellfire
Yeah.
Citadel, and I think that we can all agree that the raids in Warlords of Draenor have been phenomenal, right?
No, they have.
I mean, okay,
yeah.
so they have been amazing, but I think that we did want to talk about I guess like the spectacle creep of the abilities
Yeah.
themselves.
Sure, absolutely.
You know, if we want to compare, I think like one of the ones that we talked about was Heroic Lich King to Mythic Archimonde.
Yeah.
Heroic Lich King Phase 1 only had about 3 or 4 different abilities.
Yep.
And even in Phase 2, afterwards, the fight was basically the same. You know, because Shadow Traps was one of the only things that actually was new. And then you had the Phase 3 thing. But anyway, obviously not a whole lot of changes between normal and heroic then. And even at heroic, there weren't really that many abilities. At Mythic Archimonde, you have like 7 or 8 different abilities that you have to be watching out for at all times, and it's not like all those abilities don't do as much damage. They will all kill you if you do them incorrectly. And you have to kind of like, what I think that they're really doing is they're narrowing down the potential players that could raid. And I want to make it perfectly clear, guys. What I'm saying is that the raids are too hard. That's literally what I'm saying. I know that people will say that I'm terrible. You know, it's because I can't play. But the fact of the matter is that there are so many people with less than optimal computers, with less than optimal brains, with less than optimal reflexes. It's true, isn't it?
No, you're not wrong.
I am right. Yep. I mean, like, like, let's be real. Let's be real.
I won't say things that'll get me kicked out of my guild, but you're right.
Oh. Right.
Yeah, I think all guilds have a couple of them. But what it really comes down to is that there are all these different elements that create barriers for players to get into raiding. ICC, yeah. I believe, was the pinnacle of raiding, as evidenced by the subscriber
Totally
numbers.
agree.
And you had Deathbringer Sarfang. What did he do? You just sit there and hit him until he dies. I mean, like, Festergut, it's basically the same thing. There are all these different bosses, so it was basically just numerical difficulty rather than mechanical difficulty, you know, with the different abilities. I think, Mike Bellular, you were talking about that in one of your videos, making that differentiation. And we've seen, go ahead.
Like, there's only a certain amount that I think people can just process at once. So you've got all the stuff going on with your class, you've got the stuff going on with the boss. The stuff going on with the boss being super tightly tuned so that if you mess up, it'll kill you, that's great. But when you've got so many things going on, and often, if you look at an encounter, you've got this like big long list of stuff, and there's only a few things that you really care about. Now this is from I should definitely say this is from a heroic rating perspective, not
Casual.
mythic.
God, such a scrub lord.
I'm terrible. Yeah. I mean, normal Kargath, not Kargath. Wow, that would be embarrassing. Kilrog, that's the one.
There you go.
A little bit better.
But yeah, so there's only so many, you can almost say like clock cycles, you know, in people's heads. There's only so much stuff a second they can process before they just start, like, you know, their brain spills out of their ear, they just melt down, stuff goes bad. What they need to do is just pare back on the sheer number of abilities and things like that. And it's not necessarily about difficulty. I think it's a lot about readability. You guys are saying, like, at your at the mythic level, that's where you're going to get players who don't have a problem with readability and things like that. If there's 9 things, they'll probably get all 9 of them. But when you expand that out to even, like, say, the 50th percentile heroic, which is apparently who Blizzard balance a lot of stuff for, I think there's still a lot of people who there's so many abilities, their brain just kind of goes, nope, I am not paying attention to half of these.
Yeah.
Half the abilities, make them matter, make them really strong. You guys were talking a lot about Muru.
Yep. Well,
on our pre-show.
Oh my goodness, man!
I think that was a really good example.
Yeah. I think one of my regulars in chat even brings up the fact that, like, you know, what even about mechanics that basically require an add-on to perform correctly. Like here, I challenge any Mythic guild out there to go do Iskar Mythic without RT or the Iskar assist, because that, because that is just dumb.
I don't think it would be that hard. I really don't think it would be that hard.
Well, but compared to not having the add-on or having the add-on, how trivialized does it get with the add-on versus how we have to think about it to do, right?
Thogar assist.
Thogar assist? Not only when the trains are coming?
That is a fight. Yeah. Like, it is not readable. It's a tiny little blip up here at the side, which is what actually tells you inside the game. I think there are some times where, and I hate to say it about them because I've got a lot of respect for the raid designers. I think they're some of the best in the business, but there's times where they design really ingenious things, or genius things, whatever, from a systems level. So you write it all down on paper, and you've got a hell of a fight. But when you transfer it into the game, it turns out you need elements, it turns out you need all these other things, and I think to a degree some of those elements are failures in game design. I don't think you should have to expect people to download Thogar Assist to do Thogar. In reality, your boss should be designed in such a way that you don't need an external tool to make the games systems and clarity actually readable. That seems like they're just leaning the add-ons a little bit too much.
Intuitive design, basically.
Yeah, it's intuitive. Maybe
yeah.
better diegetics, things like that are
I mean,
important.
like, people always have add-ons that are going to make things easier.
Of course.
But I think that we've
yeah.
gotten to the point to where the raids are designed with the add-ons in mind.
Right.
And so you have all of these different elements. And so a new player, this is another barrier to entry for a new player to come into raiding, is that now they also have to have DBM and learn all this other stuff with this add-on. And I think that at the point to where you need a third-party, bit of software to actually even play the game in any real facility, I think that you're kind of running into a problem right there, just based on you're just on, I don't know, on the idea of it. On the idea of it, it seems like it seems a little bit ridiculous. And I'm sure that some people can do it without the add-on, but it's just the add-on makes it a lot easier. And I don't know. I think that, again, the raids are just they're too complex. And like what you're saying is basically people only have so much RAM in their head.
Yeah.
You know? That's it.
Yeah. And
memory exception.
Yeah, and then 6 abilities is fine, and 7, you have a computer fleets and they die, and so I mean, I think that's really kind of the way it goes for a lot of people, and for somebody that's been playing the game for 10 years, that's been raiding for 9, that's been doing this, for at least the better part of a decade. Mythic Archimonde is nothing new. I mean, it probably is a little bit new, but it's nothing that they can't handle. But that is designing for 1%. And I think that, again, the success for ICC is that, the numerical difficulty that was built into ICC rather than mechanical difficulty was what allowed a lot of players to get into it and, continually progress through the instance, along with the ICC buff that they added in, which I'm glad that they're adding in item upgrades. And I think that that's a really good way of kind of giving players a progressive power increase to continuously move forward through the dungeon.
Yeah, pretty much. There's, I think, another good point to be made about class design. So if you've got loads of difficulty on, say, the bosses themselves, that means people are relearning a big slew of new things from boss to boss. And I'd say Warlords has had that more than ever. But if you have deep classes, well, every single boss you're doing, you're also learning your class and you're becoming better at your class. So I think by having so much the difficulty be on the encounter, maybe less on the class, which is one of the things they tried to do for Warlords, at least they said that back at one of the BlizzCons or interviews. I think it's led to a bit of a problem with attrition where people, like, it's, okay, learn this encounter, there's loads of things to learn this, and, a lot of learning going on there. Whereas if the encounters are, going back to what we were saying, they're numerically very hard, but they're maybe a little bit less crazy in terms of the mechanics. If you've got that paired with a really in-depth class design, well, people are always going to learn that class design because it's what they're doing in every single encounter. I think that's maybe a design that's more sustainable and that would work for more people. I'm okay with, like, the mythic bosses being absolutely crazy. That's
of course,
totally fine. But for the normal things, I suppose I would rather have more complex classes. Because I think that just is more transferable knowledge throughout, like, your entire gameplay experience that more people can be okay with. Yeah, for the raids, like, just tone it down a little bit and go back to that. I guess I almost worry that if they're going to prune classes more in Legion, which is something they sort of hinted at, that they're going to up the ante with bosses a little bit more than now, which I guess would be worrying from an attrition standpoint. I mean, personally, I speak from this with a position of my guild basically breaking up in June or July. So I've only done, like, the first half of HFC on normal, which is unfortunate. But yeah, I just think that attrition thing from raid tier to raid tier is something they need to work on and maybe just, simplify them a bit, but maybe make classes more complex. I worry that's the opposite of what they want to do.
Well, there's the Preach's example. Refresh your camera, by the way, Bill. The Preach example is to, like we talk about with healing stuff, like we hopes for having in Legion, is that there should be no huge penalties for playing your class incorrectly, but there should be benefits to playing it better than the average. Like, there should be these echelons where you can do that. I kind of feel like there is that with, like, when I play Enhanced Shaman, knowing the priority list and knowing what button to hit every time. It's a very small margin, though, because you can basically just roll your face in the keyboard and you still do good damage. But there are very small plateaus between class design right now where you feel like you can play the class well, but then if you're better at the game and you devote more time to it and you understand the inner mechanics, you can play it a little better. And that, you can kind of argue, is in the game technically because of, like, the methods and the paragons, the serenities, those players that are in that level that have the content done so much sooner than anyone else in the game. But I think for the largest majority, which you're talking about now is the overall whole, raiding is supposed to be fun. You're supposed to feel like you're progressing, not that you're just losing players over and over again because it's just too difficult, back to Asmon's point.
Would you say the point is that maybe the difference in, say, throughput of whatever you're doing from a 50th percentile person to a 90th percentile person should be just a bit more toned down than it currently is?
I think so.
The plateau is a little vast. I mean, like a sub rogue that knows what the hell he's doing versus just a sub rogue, different people, like different players worth of damage, right?
Yeah. It's like having one player as compared to two.
Of course, or four.
It's ridiculous, and so that's another thing is that the class design now. You have a lot of different abilities with each different class that interact with your secondary stats. And so, like for warriors, you have Bloodthirst that interacts with critical strike chance, and all these other things that kind of they all come together. And not only does this create like kind of an exponential gain in damage and power, but it also makes things more complicated for people. And again, I mean, like, you're entirely right. They shouldn't be designing these classes for the 1%. Another real big success of the game in Burning Crusade and in Wrath of the Lich King, and even into Cataclysm a little bit, is that the classes were relatively simple. It didn't really take a whole lot to figure them out.
Sure.
And so it could be, like, I don't know how many kids that were like 13, 12, doing ICC. Like, they didn't have to be good at the game. It's like they're playing Angry Birds now, and so it can't be that much more complicated then. Yeah. And so obviously, the classes were just much more simple then. Whereas now, it just seems like there's so much complexity built into the classes in order to kind of get older players to understand them and get into them, that it becomes, I guess, like, hard for new players to even come in and start to understand and improve and get better at the class.
There obviously are lots of resources out there to help the communities, the different classes and specs, which I'll even get a plug in a little bit too. But there has to be a certain level to keep the game. It's such a weird topic to talk about and how to hammer in, because for older players, which are we're getting down to this point right now where we're like I would be surprised if we're still above 5 million subs at this point.
Me too.
Find out in 2 days.
Yeah, it's true. Is that it's sometimes fun to keep designing the game for those that keep playing for a long time, but you also want to have your people that are a lot less in the game, I guess, or like always playing the game.
Yeah.
Still have fun with the game and still learn things with the game.
Well,
and I wonder if it's getting a little too daunting right now.
I think that it absolutely is.
As an example, and my guild, basically like social-ish guild, decent, like really great people and all that stuff, but
sure.
I was in the position where there was like me, the raid leader, 1 or 2 other people. Like, we were like, I think 97th percentile in Chromog. Loved that. I don't know why I loved that fight, but it was fun for whatever reason. So we were there having our battle, trying to, really, as you would say, big dick it. That stuff was great. But then, because of that crazy variance, there were a lot of people who were maybe 30th percentile or something like that. Because that variance is so big, I think it leads to that position where the guilds are falling apart, and it goes back to what Bay was saying.
Well, there's a lot of
the people who just want to like hop in their raid and chill. Like, that's fine if they're doing 50th percentile and I'm doing 90th. Cool. But if the delta is so big that means the entire raid team is doomed, then it leads to the point where the teams and guilds fall apart, which is a little bit sad.
Well, there's a lot of emergent gameplay that comes out of having those big variances. And so you really have to look at like how players behave. And so if you go into a raiding guild and let's say you have a few bad pulls in a row, your raid leader could kick you out, or you could fail your trial or something like that. Now, obviously, a very good player is able to counteract that and have a much smaller variance. But I mean, obviously, again, we're talking about 1%. And outside of that, you have all these other people who get into guilds and they don't do well on pulls because of RNG elements. And then they end up, not passing trials into their guilds. And there are a lot of other emergent behaviors that have come out of the changes that they've made in Warlords of Draenor, such as we were talking about with the Warforged here. Yeah. And so a player that gets the first, like, let's say we kill Mythic Archimon, finally. One day we'll do it.
Me too, man. I feel you.
Yeah, one day.
Yeah.
Any day now. I'll beat you both.
Yeah.
Solo it.
We kill him and we get, the Mythic Cataclysm's Edge, right? and or Calamity's Edge now. And we give it to, let's say, our Rat Paladin, right? He is going to now be last on the list to get the Mythic Warforged Calamity's Edge. And so in a way, it's almost disappointing for players.
Yep.
And that's just, this is the emergent gameplay that comes out of having these Warforged items. And so at the point where I would say at the point where an upgrade becomes almost a punishment and
Yep.
absolutely a disappointment, you know, you create this horrible situation. Like, I remember the first time I got heroic Girthalak. Like, I felt so good. Okay, and that was like an 8% chance for it to happen, right? Then fast forward to Mythic BRF. I got the Mythic Warforged Blast Furnace Axe. I felt the exact same that I felt whenever I got the heroic Girthalak. Well, not quite, because it wasn't his best weapon, but you guys get the idea. And the only difference is that the chance for that to happen for me in Dragon Soul was, let's say, 8%, but the chance for that to happen in BRF was 0.8%. And so kind of like putting that carrot on a stick, I think the carrot is just too far ahead of you. And like anybody with any real knowledge or even common sense and statistics knows that you're never going to reach a point where you have all Warforged socketed gear. And for a player like me, my goal was always to reach best in slot every tier. And so whenever, you know, I realize that I'm playing a game that I can't win, I stop playing. I stop playing because there's no point. There's no win condition. And so, you know, what's going to happen with me then is, instead of replaying the raid over and over and over to get all the, you know, all the base good gear, after we clear content, yeah, sure, I'll do it for the mounts and everything like that. But I'm not going to bust my ass killing every single boss to make sure that I have a chance at Warforged loot every week. There's no way.
There needs to be, I think Warforging in like dungeons is cool, like normal and heroic raids is kind of cool, because you're like, oh, okay, it helps me get to that final level of progression. I think socket should be something that's player controlled, and Warforged shouldn't exist in Mythic endgame rating, because I've said this like 90 times. If you're a regular on the show, you're gonna be like, here he goes again. If you're killing the hardest echelon of content in the current expansions patch in the game, why do you have a chance at the best loot?
Well, think about
why not just get the best loot?
That was a really good way that they handled it. All of the raw den loot was automatically Thunderforged, which is the first iteration of Warforged.
Correct. So it's just,
it would be great if they did that for everything.
That goes back to the item level scaling issue right now, where in this expansion we've capsized 150 item levels of power.
Yes.
And the whole point of this is on the cusp, right, of trying to get the game a little lower in huge damage numbers or whatever, and we've gone from 20,000 to like 100,000+ consistent DPS in
we've
2
skipped
tiers.
an entire expansion.
I don't know.
I wouldn't be surprised if they took some measures against that. Like, as it stands, these numbers won't last 3 tiers of Legion. They might last 2 at a stretch, but I wouldn't be surprised if come BlizzCon they have some sort of system that they've worked out for this.
Well, I mean, they'll probably reach the number cap again, which is, I think, 2.1 billion. And so if we want to look at Mythic Archimond, I think he has 489 million health. And so we're already a quarter of the way there. And so it's not unreasonable at all to expect at the end of Legion, we'll have another raw den incident, or, you know, with Garrosh, we have to have multiple phases to circumvent that number cap because of the 32-bit integer thing. And I consider that a big problem. Again, and that's created by all these different varying levels of difficulty. What I would really like to see is for them to move down to ideally 1 level of difficulty for each raid. And instead of making, you know, a bunch of different levels for a raid, they make, you know, basically raids to be, you go from one raid to another raid to another raid. Now it seems like you're just stuck in this feedback loop of repeating Hellfire Citadel over and over and over.
For the next 8 months too. Yeah.
Oh God, don't even tell me that. Don't even tell me that. And it even more so. I mean, how do you think it feels whenever you kill Heroic Archimond and wipe on Mythic Assault? What a joke. Like, I don't know. I feel like a scrub after that. You know?
I mean, I miss the hard mode versions of encounters from Ulduar personally. I think interacting with the fight in some way, based on the raid size, which was different back then, 1025, was the better way to choose to play the harder encounter. Now it's very video gamey. I think the game could still benefit from having just normal heroic mythic. I think normal
Yeah.
heroic having Warforged would be fine. Mythic having no Warforged but having the best gear in the game for PvE content. Just it needs to be simplified, I think, because if the rumors are true about the Valor upgrades being a test to keep them on in Legion to make dungeons relevant throughout the whole expansion, no, thank you.
I actually wouldn't
So
mind that.
For
I
the
wouldn't
whole
mind that at all.
expansion, though.
For upgrades,
Yeah,
I don't
sure.
think expansion-wide upgrades, but I do think having it there as a form of catch-up gear is good. I don't like the upgrades the most, but I do see how they make sense in a
Right.
kind of a 0.1 or a 0.3 patch that's an interim that doesn't add a new raid tier because it's a nerf that at least people learn, which I do see the benefit of.
Well, it's like I feel like I'm like Conan the Barbarian, like forging no real talk. Forging my weapon at the top of a mountain, the top of Black Rock Mountain, and so like the more I forge into this weapon, the more valor, the more upgrades I put into it. That's what makes it real. You know what I mean? And that's kind of what I like about the item upgrades, the enchants, the
Mm.
reforging. All that stuff is investment in your gear, and
Yeah.
you put all that into it, and it really makes you, you look at that. Like I'll look at like one of those old pieces of gear, and I'm like, yeah, I did that. Like I got
Yeah.
four upgraded shock crystal in it. It's super expensive enchant, and you put all this work into it, and really from a development perspective, that creates gameplay.
No, man,
One one way or another.
that's the heirlooms right there
Yeah,
from
and
a
so
systems level.
yeah, and I don't really mind repetitive systems as long as you're progressing your character in a meaningful way. And being able to upgrade your gear, I've always really liked that system. What I would really like to do also, what Bay said earlier, is to be able to apply sockets, to apply tertiary stats, to maybe even apply Warforged to
Yeah.
items,
Control it.
and yeah, control. Whenever I have no control over, it's like, it's just like playing a slot machine. I'm not a gambler. I'm not a gambler, and so doing that kind of stuff, I really do not enjoy at all. And, it leads me to, I guess, like resent the fact that it's even in the game at all.
I
And, just some kind of way to apply those properties would be incredible. And I
I
would love to see that in Legion.
I think I don't know if either of you have played or watched much of Destiny being played, and this is kind of a contentious point because obviously people either love or hate Destiny. But I think their gear mechanics, their like grindy yet rewarding gear mechanics, I think are very, very good, I think, to be in the MMO space right now. Because A, it keeps you reusing old gear. You roll it forward into new gear because you have to like crush higher level gear to like unlock things in your current
Yeah.
gear, right? You power it up with what you've had before, right? So you don't just throw everything away or make it an enchant. It's an arbitrary like, oh, I need, berserking or executioner. There it is, right?
Yeah.
It's a constant rolling forward that as you progress forward, what happened previously helps you. Right now, you just replace gear completely. It's gone forever. It's done, right? You just forget about it. Like tier 17 now, you're in tier 18. Tier 17, what's that? Unless you
It's
have some
that
weird
high?
outlying
Wow.
trinket. So I just wonder if they're going to have some player-controlled stuff where... Because they're talking about the professions are being a big deal in
Yeah.
Legion, right? They're bringing professions back, baby.
That's great. I think
Yeah.
Professions created one of the best forms of solo player progression, and really
Sure.
there are a lot of people, and I think that adding like LFR, I think that there's also a fundamental problem with creating raiding as the end game for a non-raider. Just fundamentally, and there are a lot of people who are not really fans of raiding at all, period. And so now they kind of have to go into this to get the best upgrades that are available to them based on their time frame. And Professions used to give players away. It's like I remember from high school, I would do a jog back from the bus stop to get home to farm elementals in the elemental plateau to make my Storm Herald. Like, because I knew if I did that for enough days, I would have a weapon, and I had a clear goal in mind,
Right,
and I
right,
could
right.
get there if I worked hard enough. And now it's like there's a separation between effort and reward.
It's
But,
it's gotten
yeah, go.
very distilled to a point now where I think, again, I think what Preach said in one of his videos, that he was doing his legacy stuff from like Burning Crusade and things, and the older way the game was, that right now Blizzard's all about like making alts and playing multiple characters to give you content to do, whereas back in the day you'd be kind of overwhelmed with all the little things you had to do for your main that you would never play an alt.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how I think it should be. That's how I think it should be. Honestly, and by the way, that video, I watch that video like every 3 weeks. I'm just saying, I watch that
His
video every
legacy
3 weeks.
video, Burning
Yeah,
Crusade?
the Burning
Yeah.
Crusade video. I
Yeah.
curl up on my mattress down there in my blanket. I hold my bunny rabbit,
Oh,
and
you do.
I eat. Oh yeah, yeah. We have a relationship.
Mm.
And I eat some Cheetos, and I listen to
Of
Linkin
course.
Park. I watch that video and I cry because that's how it used to be. It was beautiful, and I would just really like to see it go back to that, honestly. I know it sounds kind of ridiculous, but that's just the way that I feel.
Right. Bill, anything else
No,
to add on
it
that?
makes
Or I'm gonna...
sense. That's what I'd like.
There needs to be... I mean, hopefully the class halls bring the World of Warcraft back to the World of Warcraft. Going out into the world, doing things, going out with your followers, literally going out with them, not just because they have a reputation bar, but because there's things to do in the world. I hope that they bring adventuring back into WoW, because right now you log in, play a Facebook game, go raid, finish the raid, go back to your Facebook game, then log out.
Or you do what I do and you just play Halo 5.
Or
a lot of
you do
people.
it-
All right, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, or you do what over half probably of people have done now. It is just stop playing the game.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah,
over
exactly.
half
Like
of
a
them.
bunch of people in chat are like, "Belt man, what the? You haven't even killed heroic Archimond. Why are you speaking?" And it's like, yeah, I ain't even playing World. I'm not raiding. My guild fell apart because Warlords wasn't good enough.
Yeah.
Like
It's a
that's
disappointment.
ultimately
It's a
what,
real truth.
what
I just
happens.
lost 4 raiders at the mythic level, right?
Yeah.
Two to real life, 1 to internet issues, like with just moving, I guess, with the IRL MO, and then now like 2 others, like 1 guild hopped and 1 didn't want to play anymore.
Yeah.
So
I think one of the biggest reasons, and it comes back to what you were saying about
Mhm.
that, is, yeah, raiding's fine, but sometimes, like in an RPG, you want to go outside of the raid and do something. Like if you're playing Witcher and you're in a dungeon, that's fine. Then you go outside of your dungeon and you're in the world, and maybe you want to go do some like a menial task or whatever. It really rounds out the MMO experience. So for a lot of people, and I remember in my guild, like most of the core members, they weren't logged in on a non-raid day because there just wasn't stuff to do.
right.
And there's someone in chat saying, as sad as it sounds, I want to be addicted to WoW again. Yeah, I want that feeling where you log in and it's just like, man, I could sit here for 18 hours and just play and play and play and play and play. Ruin the YouTube channel, ruin the games business, just play loads of World of Warcraft. That doesn't exist anymore because if you log in and it's not raid day, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Garrison
Maybe
missions.
you're farming Saberon?
Yo, I'm making the only thing
Oh,
I'm doing outside of the game
on.
right now, other than like I got the Deathwing costume because that's legit. You need to get the Deathwing costume. It's just making gold for Legion, just prepping for the fact that I might dump hundreds of thousands of gold on garbage BOE crap for an early raid tier that drops in the world that I need for raiding, which is like, okay, I'm used to that. I've done it for 3 expansions in a row, but
It's not much of an end game.
no,
It's not much of an end game.
yeah,
and
I'm
it's
farming
not-
gold.
Yeah,
I mean-
I've got over like 1 million, like 2 million gold. I don't even know how much money I have now.
Yeah.
It's just it's like you stop even keeping track. You're just doing these garrison missions over and over and over. Like that's what I spend probably 50% of my time. Like my followers spend more time outside my garrison than I
do.
Yeah.
And like as well for the money making thing, like the way I used to make money in Wrath and also in Cataclysm was mainly doing the ore shuffle. If you're not aware of the ore shuffle, basically it's you prospect ore, you get your stuff out of the ore, and then you make, you work out what to do with that.
Sure.
Is using Trade Skill Master and loads of like getting the whole economy going. And I think this is in our notes somewhere, but with Warlords really paring down the professions a lot, it took a lot of that depth away. So in between raid nights, sometimes I would log in and I'd, be an auction house goblin. And that was a lot of fun. Scamming kids for the random loot cards. Oh, brilliant stuff.
Oh my
yeah.
god.
But overall,
It's a cold world.
the taking down of the paring back of the professions from an economical perspective is what worries me. And going on into Legion, they are talking about profession quests and things like that. And all that's well and good. And I love the idea of mats coming from dungeons. But what I want to know is, like, how much of an interaction is there with the materials? How much is the actual economy itself going to be in depth? And essentially, that was a big source of fun for a lot of people that I know, and that's very much been dead. And I think to a degree, Mop really hurt that with its Motes of Harmony, which I'm not a big fan of them. But
Where
overall,
you can just buy
it's
whatever you want.
No, it's more the fact that you had to do it in your own character that they were BOP. I think if
There
you
was
make
there was no market created
I
out
I didn't
on the
mind that.
servers.
I didn't mind that because there was only one thing that you could do, and you had all these other things that you could farm as well. One of the big mistakes I think that Warlords of Draenor made is that, I mean, this is a problem for me because I make videos about this all the time. Like, what videos am I going to be making about farming stuff? There's nothing to farm.
Nothing to
You know,
farm.
like what? Yeah, I mean, there's no cloth. You know, sumptuous fur is just the end all and be all for everything. And
There's just
you know, adding those extra items to make and you know, to farm and stuff, that I guess it creates like more depth and more things for people to do and more ways for them to make money.
I'd
You know,
also say
rather
that.
than
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Uh,
pigeonholing everybody
yeah.
into doing the same thing. You know, that's I think one of the main problems with Warlords of Draenor is that everybody is expected and put on the exact same track, and they say you're going to do this, 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 and this.
right.
You know,
hmm
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you though.
Oh, it's good. Like, what's like with the whole BOE BOP thing, especially with the Motes of Harmony, is if they're BOE, what it means is there's a market for them, there's a demand for them, which then means that gameplay is created for the people who aren't the auction house goblins. Because they go out, they farm it, and yeah, it's another thing for them to farm, but because it's not BOP, or yeah, because it's not BOP, it drives more systems. So going into the dungeons as an example, if they have loads of dungeon materials, maybe even dungeon materials that drop on a personal loot basis, so like no bullshit goes on with people being angry at each other, more reasons to do dungeons, but also those reasons make an economy where it's more interesting and the economy drives more demand to do dungeons. It's this beautiful circle
Yeah.
of gameplay that I think the economy can drive that Warlords just kind of, shot.
It's kind of like what we had in Burning Crusade and Wrath of the Lich King. Burning Crusade
Yeah.
with Primal Nethers, and then again Wrath of the Lich King with Frozen Orbs.
Well,
Where
yeah.
you could farm those things from the last
Both of
boss.
those are probably going to be coming back, but I don't think that's enough. I still don't
No,
think it's kind of,
I don't
it's
think
like a
that it is.
band-aid. It's like, oh, let's fix dungeons. Frozen orbs are back.
Right.
Right? I don't know if that's what we need. I mean, I had a note on here. We have not a lot of time left to do this. I want to give some time to do some chat Q&A, but about how dungeons are very much like a straight shot. You have a point A, B, and C. I mean, you're done. There's no like roguelike-ish element. There's nothing random about dungeons. Nothing new to look forward to after 3 months, unless they just add new ones, which they didn't do in all of Warlords. So I wonder if that's going to be an improvement, because if they want to bring the dungeon system back to the game, that is sort of an integral, like, concrete base for where everything else is built off of. Because, like, everyone does dungeons for the most part. You can PvP all your way up and then never touch dungeons, but it's a very small modicum of people that do this. There's definitely a lot of things they need to bring back, and or Blizzard's very good at amalgamating from other games. I hope they take some strides from other games and get something in this concrete foundation to help the base of Legion work. Because the artifact system, there's no weapons dropping, the relic finding stuff, this apparent adventure mode we're doing, right? We're back on Azeroth now, not in some weird time-dimensional vortexy crap. So, like, we have, and hopefully things to do exploring the world of Warcraft, to go around anywhere for reasons, right? So, I hope so.
It's a lot to look forward to, and I really hope that they can deliver. You know, I think that Legion is going to be a really telling factor at where the direction of the game is going to go. You know, you've seen them make the mistakes that they made, I believe, in Mists of Pandaria, and then kind of correct some of those mistakes and then create more problems in Warlords of Draenor. And so hopefully, you know, we can see hopefully not as many new mistakes and more than anything a correction of some of the mistakes that have been created in the previous in I guess like now and in Mists of Pandaria.
I mean, I said the same thing at the end of Mist going into Warlords, where I hope they learn from their issues they had there, but I think that there are definitely some great improvements in Warlords. The game fidelity, the server upgrades, the packeting upgrades, a lot of things that you don't really think about that make the game better. But then there are a lot of things that they've tested system-wise that it felt like Warlords has been like this live beta.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, have you guys got the thing where you try and click on your shipyard mission table and it doesn't work?
You see, that involves trying to click in your shipyard mission table.
That means clicking the super mission table. Yeah.
Oh, I've clicked it before and it don't work. Like, I mean, like, we're not on a PTR. I mean, this has been going on for months, and they still haven't fixed it. I mean, I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
It's just like stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, it feels like it's been a beta. You know?
Yeah, it's funny. Like, as much as we've talked a lot about the game design and systems, I'd say systems design issues with Warlords of Draenor. One thing that's definitely worth pointing out is I think we wouldn't be in the position that we were in if, despite those systems problems existing, they just put more stuff in. You know, we're doing Mythic Auchindoun right now. Okay, that's a new system. It's the same Auchindoun.
Same thing.
Yeah.
We have a big problem where they put out 6.0. It lasted a few months, but they didn't support it other than using systems design. I know systems design and content design are like really one and the same in most regards, but if you were to split them, they've been putting in all these systems to just like wring more content out of what they've already put in, rather than just like put a new dungeon in, chaps. Come on, we like those.
Well, that's
So
yeah.
that's it. Almost makes me think that in some ways with Warlords, it came out, they thought, right, either it's their 1 year plan or they just dropped it and thought, okay, this is beyond saving. Let's shift it on over to Legion. But I just think it's overall worth noting that, yeah, one of the biggest issues with Warlords was there just wasn't enough stuff. New stuff, interesting stuff. There wasn't something to look forward to.
You remember what I was saying, and this would be the last thing I have to say since I know we're trying to move on, is that, remember when I was telling you guys about what that one dude said that I thought was so smart? Is that, in now in the game, you don't play the expansion, you play the patch. And you remember that? That is so good. In 6.2, there's no reason to do Heimel, no reason to do Blackrock Foundry. And so they basically remove content by adding new, by adding new patches. And whereas before, that new patches would add content to the expansion. And so by the end of the expansion, you had all this new stuff to do. But now we're at the end of the expansion and we have one thing to do. And that one thing is Hellfire Citadel. And I think that it's a great raid, but at the end of the day, you can only do it so many times.
Totally.
I didn't want to play devil's advocate too much on that, but actually, if you pay attention to HFC, there are lots of reused mechanics in the entire raid that are they're newish, but there's a lot of very similar mechanics that kind of just like, oh, this boss gets that one, and he gets that one too, and this one's a little different, but the same exact thing on this one, and that one gets this. So, as cool as HFC is, thematically, I think it's great. Like, it's a great-looking dungeon, and there's a lot of cool-looking bosses. There are a lot of... Everything is very similar if you break stuff down, which I hope they also get rid of that to some degree. I don't know.
If they had less mechanics per boss, they wouldn't run into that as much, probably.
They don't have to worry about copy-pasting certain things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think also it's our perspective as Mythic Raiders,
maybe,
and knowing kind of what to expect and what to see.
Yeah.
It's whenever I see a boss, I can see General Nazgrim Ravagers, Malkorok Bubbles, all those things, and I automatically know the list of what to handle, and it's kind of a I don't know, little put together there. And so, I mean, of course, that's the case, but I do think that Hellfire Citadel is one of the best raids that they have ever released.
No, it's good. It'll definitely be in a top 3 to 5 list, I agree.
Yeah.
It definitely beats the pants off BRF, but maybe because we just didn't care for BRF because...
BRF, I thought, was incredible also.
I think
BRF,
a lot of fun in it.
Thogar was probably the most memorable fight, kind of like how Blackfuse from Siege is the fight's awesome. In my opinion, anyway. Just everyone's different depending on how... Because depending on how you see the raid or what kind of difficulty you play it at, you have a different perspective, but...
In the interest of not going on for another 20 minutes,
sure,
I'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
I did really enjoy BRF, though.
No, yeah. It was... That's...
Thogar certainly created memorable moments.
Oh, my goodness.
I don't know how many times I got hit by trains.
Alrighty then. Well, I want to give chat room some time to interact with us directly through Twitter and the Twitch chat here for asking us some questions. So I'm going to give you guys a little bit of announcement stuff and some things you might not know about, and just to kind of cover the bases for FinalBossTV stuff. Of course, with the BlizzCon information coming out soon, please make sure, if you do not know of it already, to have MMO Champion bookmarked, because they are going to be posting a ton of stuff. They've actually got some stuff already from the Warcraft movie that have been released, like some movie stills. And this is where you want to go. Make sure you have MMO Champion, MMO-Champion, link is down below the stream. And get this ready to go, because there's going to be blue posts and reps from panels and dev interview things being posted here. There's also, of course, the BlizzCon Calm Before the Storm party that I'll be at and hosting the main final panel of on Thursday, if you're going to be in the area. But yeah, you got to get this ready to go, because this is going to look like this for pages and pages and pages soon. The best time to have this bookmarked and get to this website is going to be this next couple of days. So MMO Champion, make sure you have that there. Additionally, of course, if you have any past episodes you want to catch up on or haven't seen before, everything is put together on FinalBoss.tv. If you want to do the audio-only versions of episodes, we're on iTunes and Stitcher as well. Go to the episode page right here. All the news posts come up here on the front page. We'll only hold 3 at a time, but they're all on YouTube as well. Additionally, if you want to help, or not help, I guess, if you want to learn more about some other great communities and websites that you may not know about, the Firelord's favorite page is almost done. I have to add a bunch of artists and a few more YouTubers, I believe, to this page. But this is a huge collaboration effort to put together a giant sort of compendium of different websites, different YouTubers that I've either worked with or that have really great content out there. Just still a couple more things to put up. And either friends of the channel or people that I personally think that you should go check out if you're looking for other things in this vein or for other gaming content in that regard. You can go check out the Firelord's favorite page right there on the website. And then here is for the support part. We also have our Designed by Humans apparel and art store. If you want to, I'm very much in the way of if you want to help support Final Boss TV and keep me doing what I'm doing and keep me interviewing people, you can literally buy a shirt for yourself. We have stickers now. Stickers are new. These are so... I'll be bringing 300 stickers and a whole bunch of shirts to give away at the convention. If I bump into you there, I'm also going to have wristbands to give away that are the legacy stuff from the first incarnation of me going to BlizzCon 2 years ago. But that's all right there for you. If you want to go check that out and support the show, thank you all so much. Those of you who have done said things and bought yourself a shirt or a hoodie or whatever. The stickers, though, I'm excited for that. It's going to be awesome. But let's get back to this. To get some questions from chat, and if you guys see something that is a good little tidbit, of course you can send me a direct question on Final Boss TV on Twitter, and I'll read that out on stream, and we'll talk about it. We've got about 20 minutes left, I think, so let me know what you guys want to ask. Let's see.
Do we get to read questions now?
If you see something that's like thought-provoking, then go for it. Absolutely.
Thought-provoking.
It's going to be a lot of trying to keep up with chat because it might.
Do you believe that we should be forced to play alts? Do you think the game should revolve around one big climb like it used to be? And so I think that's something that we talked about already. Kind of in regards to where only one player. Sorry, this is like kind of distracting me. Where the game was designed for just your main, and now it's kind of designed with alts in mind. And so that's what one person was asking. And so my answer to that is yes. I think the game should be designed to where you can play one character and never run out of things to do.
I agree with that to most part. I mean, alts should be a thing you play on the side, not something that's like, oh, I'm out of things to do on my main. Might as well play my alt now. Like, that's a bad feeling.
Yeah, and the more catch-ups and the more things like that there are, then the more people do alts, which means that come the next patch, the more it needs to be alt-friendly, or else people are going to complain because the last patch gave them a bunch of alts. So now we're at the stage where everyone has like 8, 9 level 100s or something like that, and making a game that is fun for somebody playing 9 characters and making a game that's fun for someone playing 1 character, they're very different games, and sometimes it feels like what you really want to do is what Asmongold said and just play your 1 character, and it maybe isn't facilitating that as well these days.
This is another one that I saw. It was really, really good question that I think that a lot of people, kind of take from D3, which is whenever, basically how would we feel about dungeons that would scale with your item level? Same as like Greater Rifts do, where you can just like increasingly do harder and harder difficulties. Now, for me personally, I am not really a big fan of that because, again, I think that once you create these scaling difficulties, it creates a profit incentive, for the company to not create new content. And I think that's one of the big reasons why we haven't seen new dungeons is because scaled up dungeons and LFR and other difficulty modes make those irrelevant.
Yeah, there's a good question here from Wicked Celestial who said, do you think they should make leveling more challenging, and maybe it shouldn't be, say, 1 to 19 a day, 90 to 105 hours. There's sort of 2 different things there, and it's something I wanted to touch on in the main part of the show as well. It's just the general difficulty of like the leveling, B, the world content. Yeah, I think they should make stuff actually be dangerous in the world of Warcraft. That sounds like a pretty crazy thought. It's face roll all the time from 1 through 100, and then when you are level 100, unless you're doing something like designed for like 4 or 5 players, it's still a face roll. I think that's a really big issue because there's a lot of the times when people maybe they don't want to raid, they don't want to do a dungeon, they just want to head out in the world and do something. There should be that difficulty there, and some of the most fun that I've had in parts of the game is things like Fel Rangari, Anara, and those like little challenges that you find every once in a while, which can really be good fun gameplay. As for the leveling speed in this question, I think it's too fast, and I think it's one of the things that goes into that alt problem I mentioned, where it's just getting crazy.
Making the old expansion content a little quicker is fine, but I think the fact that it's still propagated out that people have found ways. I guess people are always going to find ways to make something more efficient and quicker anyway. But they said Warlords would be savage, right? And I don't know at what eye level it's savage, but it definitely was never savage for me or any of my alts.
715.
Oh yeah, is that when it feels difficult?
Well, no, that's actually the upgrade token that it's a Savage Essence that upgrades to item level 715. That was a meta joke. It was a meta joke.
I see. Okay. I don't know. But then I don't know because the game kind of gets balanced for like the 50th percentile aimed at who plays heroic rating. And I don't know if the game is difficult for that echelon of the game because I don't.
For the outside world, I mean, remember Azuka Blade Fury and how long it took for her to die?
Oh man, like
stuff
17
like that
seconds.
Out in the world. Yeah.
So
and they do no damage to you as well, which is a bit worrying.
How about something from Twitter real quick here? What aspects or mechanics of other games you've been playing do you think would work well in Legion or future WoW? Well, I've already given my example of the item sort of system, the unlocking and powering up system from Destiny. So what else do you guys think? What do you think, Bell?
That's a tricky one.
A little bit.
Like I've been playing Star Wars: The Old Republic lately, which has certainly been interesting because it's so very different to World of Warcraft. And there's a lot of things that I'd love to say I'd like to see in WoW, but would they really work? Because SWTOR is probably not the best MMO, but a really good single-player game.
Yep.
Certainly, I like the idea of having a little bit more. This is in the leveling stuff, but just the odd choice here and there in terms of narrative. And little things like that, little character moments, I think that could be a really nice mechanic for building out World of Warcraft as an RPG. There's also a lot to be said about the idea, and this is something that SWTOR actually very recently implemented, is a scaling system for old content.
Yep.
Now in Legion, we know they might be doing that with whatever the hell this adventure mode is. We don't actually have a clue what it is, bar the name, but I think there could be some really interesting stuff with scaling either old bits of content, maybe that's less interesting, or at least stuff in older areas and then doing something new with it that could be a big gain in Legion anyway.
That would be my guess. I don't really have anything to contribute from other games, but I can say the leveling process, I don't think a lot of people ever really reach max level. And, having, like, being level 37, I always use this example. Your goal whenever you're level 37 is to get to level 38, and you have a very clear goal, a very clear path, and you're always being rewarded for your play. Where whenever you get to max level, it's kind of harder for you to really determine what are you really supposed to do. And, a lot of people, they do get a lot out of that leveling process. And now that we don't really have one, I think that that's been a very big detriment to the game because of how many people do just play casually and maybe they do never hit max level.
That's what the adventure guide is for, though, Asmon. You click on the little button and it tells you what you can go do.
Oh, geez, those people don't even know what that is.
Yeah, too many people don't even know there's an adventure guide button. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. There needs to be something that is grindy yet rewarding, and I feel that that's not a lot of in the game anymore because the grind we have now is all time gated. Like this ties into the next question I had for Twitter. Are legendaries worth it? I was assuming you mean like the ring right now. It's worth it if you're rating end game heroic or mythic, but if you're not, it makes you kill the Halloween boss faster.
Well, it's not fun to do. I don't.
That's
what
it comes down to.
Ring. I think that expansion along legendaries, the way that they've handled the ring and before the cloak, I hated it. Okay, just real simple. I didn't like it. I think that they should, because again, it's not. I don't really care, but I don't think that it's good for the game. Because again, it's new players coming into the game. Oh, what is this? I've got to go. I've got to do all these different raids, and it's just like this thing. And realistically, I mean, like guys, let's be real. I mean, if you don't have the ring, you don't get into a raiding guild. you know? And so it's this another huge barrier, another time-gated barrier for people to even get into playing the game. And it's all this time gating. I think that was a really good point where it's just the time gating is just I think it was just completely overboard and wad. And I
Yeah.
think that even Blizzard conceded that, and I think that we can see that going away to a large extent in Legion.
Certainly, I think that they need to be careful about overt retention mechanics in the future because
Yeah.
it seems like with this, a lot of people they logged in, they were like, "Wow, you guys are clearly trying to string me on from week to week more than you usually used to," and then you look at your garrison and you see Facebook games. A lot of that stuff, feels like a mobile game, feels like it's retention, feels more like it's treating you not like an adventurer, but like a number that needs to be
A
retained.
number, yeah.
And people just sort of bounced off that. So with the legendaries, like I completely agree with I think everyone on the call right now. They need to go, and hopefully not heirlooms. I said heirloom earlier. The artifact
System, yeah.
I really hope that doesn't do the same thing, and that it gives perhaps that idea of something that's worth it, grindy, but not super repetitive feeling, and not time gated from week to week in the same way that
It'll
we
be
have
like patch
ads.
gated and like progression gated, right? Because I'm sure there's going to be a quest that's like, kill all of these dungeon bosses to upgrade your heirloom to like your artifact rather to like the damage right above heroic dungeons, right? So to kill all 8, 9, 12, whatever the final boss. Yeah, that's something you have to go out and do. But I think I was like, kill this boss in the raid on normal or heroic, and it'll be one to like kill this later boss on normal or heroic, and there'll be one to kill this boss on mythic, right? They'll kind of be like this like quest hall, I think, like stepping ladder, but like you're always moving forward. And once you get through the patch content worth, like you'll be done with the patch because I'll have to like actually give you like the almost like a Wrathion Ash, patch 7.1 has the next step in your artifact chain because it's actually content that needs to be put in the game.
Yeah.
Well, thinking of the legendary quest, like I think it was the most fun in Warlords at the start, whereas go to these dungeons, do something because it gives you a set goal. You just go out and do it.
Yeah.
That stuff was great.
I
More
enjoyed
exciting
that a
than
lot.
kill this person 8 times and hopefully you're lucky.
Hopefully, yeah. I mean, you don't even know what you're gonna get. It's like, oh, am I gonna get the item? Kill the boss? No. Okay, great.
And at least
see
it
you
wasn't
next week.
Mocha Runes of Fate.
Yeah.
So another one here, and I think this is a big question.
Go for it.
That has to do with like the automated queuing systems. Is do you guys think that they should add something that has to do kind of with I guess like rating players, like for toxic players like assholes, basically like people like me. How do you think that they should add a system into that where you can rate players up or down and something to like I guess combat toxic player behavior? Now, personally, for me, I don't think they should do that at all. But I don't know what you guys think about.
There could be. Oh, go ahead, Bill.
I think they should have a look at what the MOBAs are doing because toxicity is the worst there, and they seem to be the genre that's trying to spearhead against that problem.
Right.
Don't know how much they're actually succeeding.
I played Heroes of the Storm. None.
Oh no.
Well, Heroes is really light on that right now. I think what you look at is Dota and League. With the banner system and stuff like that, the little like icon things or whatever.
Yeah. And even if you look into like Overwatch, they seem to have this thing where you can like upvote people at the end of a match. Like nice little things which are treating other players in a good way that are maybe outside of it being a competition for a resource. Like, this person got a role, I didn't.
Right.
But yeah, toxicity is it's a pain in the ass, and there's probably something they should do. Certainly, and I remember we were talking about this during the pre-show call, is things like, say, the ability to kick and how that can currently be abused in LFR to troll
very
people.
much so.
I think they need to take a second look
I
at
honestly,
like
here's my thinking on that, is that players have the right to associate with who they choose to. If the majority of the player base of the player base of a group chooses to remove somebody from that group, that should be entirely allowed because that's freedom of association. I don't really see what's wrong with that. And if the majority of players don't want to play with somebody, why is the game forcing them into playing with someone who they don't want to? I mean, I think that would kind of create contempt and resentment from both sides.
To a degree, yeah, I think so.
I mean, the game has gotten to a point right now where you're not like putting together outside of like the pre-made group finder thing is really helpful for this, even though a lot of people still like, you need ahead of the curve Archimond to go kill Archimond.
Yeah.
To get your ahead of the curve. So there are some pitfalls there, but I think since the game has gotten very video gamey with all of these queue systems, that there's a lot of just like blank slate faced players just like jump in and jump out, or they jump in and like one person has disagreement with them and they get kicked, right? Or they get like, you know, bad mouth, or the toxic behavior starts happening. So it doesn't feel like very community oriented anymore, because these people you're never going to see ever again, basically, because how expansive the queue system is.
Yeah, well, I think that's kind of a side effect from having the queue system at all. Personally, I don't really like the idea of arbitrating player behavior. You know, I think that people should be able to do whatever they want, obviously to an extent. But you know, if the majority of players do want to remove somebody from the group, you know, and if there is like some kind of toxic behavior going on, I mean, at some point you can't protect people from themselves. And I would say just allow people to choose who they want to play with. Any sort of a upvote, downvote voting system. See, here's what really is going to happen: is that a new player is going to get into a group and they're going to be consistently downvoted for playing like crap, right? And that's actually going. Yeah, I mean, like, let's be real. You know, because like a lot of these ideas sound really great in your head, but whenever you actually implement them and the emergent behavior that comes out of them is actually very punishing for maybe just for a certain subset of players or for a larger subset of players, like all the new players coming back. And then they get punished because somebody wants to downvote them. And so then you get into the thing of like arbitrating, you know, unnecessary downvotes. And it's just like this never ending cycle of bullshit, really.
What can happen for that is you could just, at the end of the alpha or whatever, give somebody 5 upvotes, no downvotes, and like you just dispense the positivity, and then hopefully that encourages people to be more positive, and then take away that punishing element. Because yeah, when players can punish other players, it can get a little bit tricky, and people can abuse that. And then systems to police the systems, to police the systems.
Yeah,
and it starts getting crazy.
I think that's an interesting idea. Let's see. I mean, I think we talked about that for a little bit more. I think somebody talked about gold inflation. I don't think it's gonna. I don't think it's really gonna be an issue, honestly. It hasn't been, and the reason I see that is because there are so many gold sinks already in the game, and I think we can see more in Warlords. I also think, more in Legion, and there are a lot in Warlords, and I can also pretty much assume that they're going to be removing entirely, if not pretty much entirely, the gold missions whenever Legion comes out, which is what I think that they should do.
Oh, they're gonna gut. Yeah.
They
Anything from
should.
your shipyard or your garrison that grants gold directly is going to probably be removed from the game once Legion comes out, because then you're gonna be forced into going back to your garrison.
Yeah, it's a very interesting dynamic now that, because if you had a big gold sink, in a way that is an incentivization to get people to buy WoW token. That's where that turns into a really interesting system, because a month purchased with WoW token is another $5 in Blizzard's pocket. So in terms of their own incentivizations when it comes to gold sinks, economy and all of that stuff, I don't want to say it's a conflict of interest, but it creates some very interesting things surrounding gold. As an example, right when token came out, a few other things happened. In was it
675 gear? You're thinking about that?
Yeah, there's the 675 gear. There were the mounts in your garrison. Just little things like that.
Yeah, as and I had a discussion about that, and I don't really agree that Blizzard has a conflict of interest with creating gold sinks to influence token buying, but I do, agree that it creates a conflict of interest in terms of like the store mounts and creating mounts for the game, and so I don't really think that the gold has too much of an effect on it, though.
It should self-regulate.
Yeah, people keep asking about legacy servers.
I saw that a couple times. That's like the question I was about to ask. I was going to say I don't believe it's going to happen.
I don't think it'll happen. What I would hope that they would do, honestly, is they open a server up and they say, listen, it's 2004. And then they progress the server naturally throughout the game's life cycle that's already occurred. And so go through the Scarab Board event, go into Burning Crusade, and do all of that in the same ways. I don't really know how they do mechanics or anything like that, but that would be the way that I would like to see it. But personally, I would like to see them make the retail game better rather than trying to make a legacy server.
Yeah. Personally, I'd love it as an option if it's a progression server, but on the wider picture, I think it just makes more sense to double down on Legion and make it better, because that's the future of the game.
There's so much, I've said this before too, there's so much world in World of Warcraft that no one ever sees or does anything in. It just sits there. I mean, this is like gigs and gigs worth of data and coding and work put into the game that just sits there and doesn't do anything. Because you
Yeah.
can skip you can skip leveling and skip all of these contents and all of this stuff. It's just gone. So you just say adventure mode, Bell? Adventure mode?
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah.
You know, that could be a way to use some of that stuff. I agree though, like it's the biggest Legion invasion ever, right? So how about they're, you know, dropping into Elwyn, they're flying into the hinterlands, there's events going on in the world. I suppose this is a bit reminiscent of elements of Rift or Guild Wars with their events, but stuff like that in the world that will lead to everyone like sitting in Stormwind or whatever. Some stuff goes down in Westfall and you just see a big fleet of people in their flying mounts heading down to Westfall doing a bit of emergent-ish content.
Yeah.
That I think they might do that, and certainly for their launch event of Legion, I know at some point they've said that it is going to involve like a worldwide invasion, worldwide event. So perhaps we're going to see more use of that world.
I hope so.
I really hope so too. That would be great.
It'd be really nice.
I hope there are reasons to go into the World of Warcraft. Like I always use this example. I think the same thing to you in the pre-show setup. I was like, what if there was a quest that sent you to stop this new satyr influence in Marden on the purple side, but you had to actually travel the world to go there? How many people in chat right now are going, there's a portal? And where is the portal to Maradon? And that there are even two different portals into Maradon. Like, there are reasons why you'd be like, oh, this is, where am I going? Like, you might just look it up on Wowhead or WowDB or wherever you gotta, like, find the place to go, but you are adventuring and traveling out into the World of Warcraft again. They have to kind of dangle carrots on sticks, right? But at least there's a reason to go somewhere new that you may have never been before. That's gonna happen. That needs to come back to the game. They want to bring the fantasy back to the classes. They need to bring the fantasy back to the game because it's very much a gamey video game now and not much of a RPG anymore.
The sense of adventure.
Yeah.
You know, that's the term I use for it.
Yeah.
I think that there was another question I don't entirely. If we could ask any one question to the at BlizzCon, what would we ask?
Well,
I think that's interesting.
You're getting ahead of me at that moment because I was going to say
Thrall's eyebrows. Obviously, it's the real important stuff.
Oh yeah. Murloc's going to be a playable class.
There you go.
Totally. Mainly, I'd say stuff surrounding like RNG would be one. Like if I was face to face with the dev, that's what I'd say first because that seems in my head to be one of the most kind of design mishaps. So that's probably my answer.
RNG with the combat system, you mean? Like the
RNG with the combat system, RNG with the loot that you get, just in general, the topic.
Okay. What do you think, Asmon?
I'd probably either that or I guess like the sense of progression through raids and difficulties and what really they expect players to do. That would be kind of, I would be curious to see, like, what do they expect somebody who hits level 100? What do they expect them to do after that? You know what I mean?
What is their roadmap that they have?
Yeah. Just so you get an idea, and hopefully so that can kind of shed some light on where they kind of expect players to go.
Okay. That brings up a good question that I'll pose back to chat. Because I am going as media this year to BlizzCon, if you guys have questions for the devs, if you want to send an email through the Ask a Boss email, I'll take them with me if they're like really good ones. So obviously don't send me like, you know, Ian, why are you an eyeball or whatever.
Yo, why does the game suck?
Yeah. So just if you have like an actual like legitimate like deep thoughted out question, like just a one simple little bit, no 4 paragraphs, send me an email and I'll search through them before I leave to go to BlizzCon on Tuesday.
I have one right now.
Okay.
Throughout WoW and throughout any fantasy game, there's been the idea of a sea monster. And I'm serious, okay? In Mists of Pandaria, and no, even before, in Cataclysm, we had Bashir. It was an entire zone full of sea monsters. We had the whale shark. Then we go into Mists of Pandaria. We have Ganathus, this little purple swirly thing, and you kill him, and it's awesome. You literally have a kraken. You have 3 different kinds of krakens. You've got another whale shark. In Warlords of Draenor, you have a rare spawn off the coast of Gorgon that you can kill in 3 hits. Right. Where are the sea monsters? Where are the fungal whale sharks? These are important questions, and I want to kill some sea monsters.
Oh, and where's the damn Abyssal Maul while you're at it?
All right, but you have to ask that one. You have to ask that one. It's very important.
We're going to get you kicked out.
I mean, that's you're not wrong. I think there's definitely a element of maybe a bit. That's kind of the fantasy element, right? Like the water should be kind of dangerous. I think the world should be a little more dangerous in that regard too. But I mean, yeah, what the Abyssal Maw stuff, Neptulon things, maybe it's going to happen again in Legion because Ajara is sort of involved. Will we get more of that stuff? Will the water be more dangerous? Will there be sea monsters now, like all over the world? Yeah. Where are the Fellow Reavers was another question that came up in the same vein. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like sea monsters, man. Like, they're awesome.
This is the
That's
hard.
all I got to say.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I think it's just really cool.
Yeah.
And it was a disappointment to me. I think that they were, well, I mean, we saw concept art of fungal whale sharks. And so I think that it was definitely in the plans, but it just didn't happen since that was related to Farrowon. But yeah, I would really like to see more of that in Legion. And that is a dumb enough question for them to actually answer in the Q&A.
Be a good one, sure.
Yeah.
Well, this time
also
with the Q&A, they're like taking questions beforehand.
Yes, they are.
Yeah,
No,
yeah,
I'm talking about
Thank you.
my media one-on-one time I get behind the curtain kind of thing. Where I can ask questions directly. Yeah.
People are asking, how much more time do we have? I don't want to.
We're about at it right now. So what do you got?
Some guy was asking, what do we think about 1 to 2 year expansion releases? I prefer 2 year.
I prefer 2 year. You say 2 year?
Yeah,
2 year. 2 years with major content patches every like 6 to 8 months, with minor ones every 2 to 3 between.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So we're pretty
Basically,
much on the same
like
page.
an up and down rotation where you have like a big one on the future, but a little one coming soon, kind of thing. So you're always sort of working on, 1 year
Look at
expansions kind of seem stupid.
Look at the MOP subs. They go like this, but then once the regular content, it just plateaus and it stays there.
Plateaus and done.
It works.
It was they were bleeding out the whole way long. What are you talking about? They never went up until the release.
They had a bump in 5.3 or 4.
Yeah, wasn't that whenever they announced WAD?
They went like this, and then it just kind of stayed flat-ish, around 400k. Because it was something every while.
I think that Missa Pandaria, I hated the idea of Missa Pandaria fighting your emotions. Nah, man, like Lich King fighting the Lich King, this giant Lich monster with this rune sword on the top of a mountain. That's it. That's what I like to do. But I mean, and so yeah, I really didn't like that. Even with that though, Missa Pandaria had some great content. That's one thing that I don't think a lot of people can deny.
I think, a two-year expansion with 3 tiers, and then each tier brings new dungeons, not just like some stupid Tanan jungle thing. Each tier usually has, obviously, 1 or 2 raids in it. That raids have dungeons to have a catch-up mechanic for gearing or for progression or for story, and that's how the game moves forward, each one. It just feels better that way. It's very much Wrath of the Lich King style. Like, ICC came out with 3 dungeons, and the new area with after the in the front of it, we're assaulting it, which is a expansion from the Argent tournament. Like, it all flowed together. Now it's just
about that.
Yeah, now it's just like you had High Mall and BRF, and then all of a sudden we're in HFC, and there's no dungeons didn't lead us there. We had Tanan Jungle at the same time, but it's kind of like everything is just kind of like filling up a bar and isn't really consequential. So, yeah, we need to do something like that. But I think that's about to do it. If you guys have a ton of questions, of course, as they are still rolling through chat, these fine gentlemen are both on Twitter. They're very easy to find. If you want to find them on Twitter, of course, they have their YouTube pages that have been being plugged underneath their names this whole time. You can give it to that. I know that Bell does take questions the same way. I think you do take questions the same way when you're streaming, Asmon. So that's where I do it. But I think we're out of time because I need to make sure this episode doesn't go over 2 hours long because that's just too much. So I'm going to hit this button right here. And there it goes. So thank you all so much for tuning in today for episode 102, which is the BlizzCon 2015 pre-special talkie talk time stuffs. If you, of course, have missed the episode or want to see more, they're all on YouTube, as well as iTunes and Stitcher for audio only. Links are down below to FinalBoss.tv for the show itself and everything related to it. Let's go around the corner for our guests real quick here. There's Bellular. Come back on for another time. Another pre-BlizzCon special down, Bell. You did it!
Indeed.
You did it! Go tell Reddit!
Thanks for making this particularly special, chat. You guys are great.
Yep, absolutely. And again, there's Bellular's YouTube channel, Bellular Gaming. You can go check him out there, and you can also find him on Twitter, and all the socials are listed right there. And this next 2 weeks are going to be pretty crazy, Bell. You ready for this?
Man, I am seeing Adobe After Effects timelines in my sleep. It's some creepy stuff.
Yes! Oh man, that's gonna be good. And there's Asmongold himself. Thank you for being on the show, sir, for your first time. I think we did it. You can also tell Reddit we did it, I think.
We did it?
I think we did. Did we do it?
I think that we did. I had a good time on the show. I honestly didn't know if I'd be able to do it because I had like an hour and a half of sleep before getting on here. But I had a really good time being on here, and thanks a lot for having me. And, you know, I don't really know what else to say, but I had a good time. And that's pretty much it.
Yep, you can go follow Asmongold on his YouTube as well. It's Virtual Exchange, spelled awkwardly. Do you have a reason behind this?
Yeah, it's really stupid.
Do you want to tell us?
I tried to set up a website and VIR was taken.
Ah, okay, so, okay.
Yeah, you know.
That's
I
it.
mean, I thought I should have rebranded it at like 1,000 subs. But I got a custom link. But anyway, yeah, it's kind of a weird story.
It's fine. I mean, people were asking what the link was I was putting below your name, and that's your YouTube page. So people don't know that because they just look up Asmongold, and that's what it comes up as.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's gonna come up. You Google Asmongold, you're gonna have plenty of me.
Yeah,
okay, that's all it's gonna be.
Plenty of you. Exactly.
Plenty of me.
Oh my goodness.
What could be better?
Oof. Well, thank you for tuning in today. Of course, we'll see you in the YouTube comments. Next week, people are asking me about like what's going to happen after BlizzCon. There's no show on the 8th because I'll be literally across the country. On the 15th will be our post-BlizzCon 2015 wrap-up special with Preach and Nobble. So I'll see you there for that. If you have questions for either of those, you can send them in on the Ask a Boss link, or we'll see you there for the main show, of course. And thank you all so much. Trust in your Seal of Inevitable Warforged Gold. Enjoy watching the virtual ticket, or I'll see you at BlizzCon. This week's gonna be crazy, everybody. But until then, bye-bye! Bye-bye! Wave bye to people! Wave! Wave bye! Wave!
Do I?
Wave! There you go! Oh my god, that was amazing.
Do I still need to keep doing this?
Keep doing it, keep doing it.
Okay, good. Tell me when to stop.